there's a lot of people who now are in the cycle of despair and they don't understand. Like, I hear you, but it's like this God that you keep talking about, like, where is he now? And if you look at even the story of Jesus, how it says that after he was baptized, the Holy Spirit came upon him and he was led by the Spirit into the wilderness. And even moments like this are moments that you're led into. God literally is like, I got you, and you have to be able to believe even during this period. This is not what I'm used to, and this is not in any way comfortable. I was getting some level of success when I was at Potiphar's place, man. I was doing well, man. Why this now? If we complain and grumble, we'll miss it. But if we accept it and allow God to do his thing, that's how we find the grace and the strength to be able to basically go through this season. This is the time when we're meant to pray. This is the time we're meant to worship. This is the time, what is that? Upend? What is that? Go
climb and maintain.
Yeah, climb and maintain. Like, especially at this time, our truest worship comes from the place of, deepest despair, where, like Jesus, you're in the Garden of Gethsemane, and at that time, at that moment, at that place is when you're like, your will be done. Answers the question for what do you do when you wait? You have to guard your mouth. The unbelief that was being demonstrated by the Israelites wasn't in their actions, it was in their speech. You get what I'm saying? It wasn't what they were doing, it's what they were saying. Do you know how difficult it is to speak words of faith in this season? To speak words of hope, to speak words of praise in this season? This is the most difficult. So you're just praying. What a cop-out, There are just times where, just like Joseph, man, I'd love to do more, but I'm in prison. And yet in that place, God is blessing you. Within the confines of what a prison could be, you have no freedom, but it's like you have favor. So you're not like treated harshly as like the other guys, but you're still in prison. This is where faith becomes manifest. This is the fodder in which faith grows, because faith has always been about your speech. It's always been about your tongue. Do you know how hard? That's why James is there, like, my guy, the guy who can tame the tongue is disciplined in all things. And so what God does is that he takes you through a season where, my guy, your default position, based on how you look at it, should be to complain, and rightfully so. Honestly, if you look at the Israelites, they weren't complaining about things that weren't happening. They were complaining about what was happening, actually. It's right in front of them. They're like, my guy, why would you take us to a place like this, where there's no fruitfulness? See, Egypt is even better. Why would you put us in a place like this, in a place where there's nothing that's growing? Why would we have to go through this? Imagine during a season like this and you're still there being like, yeah, this is my year. This is the year that God is gonna bless me.
So crazy.
It sounds crazy, right? You go to talk about that. This is the year that our business is going to elevate to new levels. This is the year. Imagine you're having a conversation about that. When I look at the business and I'm just there like, wow. And still, even in this season, in this time, even in a place of absolute despair, Jesus says, your will, not my will. Because what's interesting about that moment with Jesus, the Garden of Gethsemane, I don't think we see this vulnerability that Christ has up until this point. And it's so beautiful because he literally goes to his Father and he tells him, if there's a way that I don't have to do this, I'd really appreciate. And his Father doesn't respond. And his lack of response is like, okay, not my will, your will be done. For the good of those who love